how have you been able to transition to being a mom, but don't let it encompass your entire life?
I'm your host, TIffany Souter, and this is Scared Confident. So a couple weeks ago, I got an email from Lindsay McGuire. I'm sitting with her right now. I'd been on their podcast, and she, from that, heard that I had a wagon full of kids. And she reached out with an email, and it said this. It says, "I'd love to chat with you sometime about transitioning into the phase of being a working mother." So I thought, what a really awesome opportunity. And Lindsay's agreed to sit down with me and kind of have coffee over microphones here. Because I think so many of us have questions at any life transition, but in particular, when we feel so much in our environment and in our bodies changing when we're pregnant. And so this is really going to be just coffee with Lindsay. I'm going to be asking her some questions about her life, and we're going to just kind of see where it takes us. So what are the questions you find yourself most kind of mulling through in your mind?
Oh man, there's all the things. I mean, pregnancy in and of itself is just so bizarre because no one has the same experience. You can read all the books, but none of them are going to tell you what you're going to experience. So it just being okay with all the changes you're going through is hard. And like wanting to have control, wanting to know, wanting to like see your map and your plan. And so many things can just go awry. So I think trying to find the comfort in the unknown, which I think every human struggles with. But just during pregnancy, it's so hard, especially because I'm very athletic, I'm very fit, I'm very much like owner of my body mindset, and you have no ownership of your body anymore. So I think adjusting to that is really difficult. But I think in general, one of the biggest things I've been struggling with, and probably if you talk to most of my friends or my junior league ladies or things like that, their conversations I keep going back to is there's this idea that when you become a mom, you lose your identity. And that is my biggest fear, probably. I don't want to just become a mom. I think mom is going to be part of my trifecta of who I am and who I am as a person. And it's not the only definition of myself, but as you read articles and blogs and stories and talk to moms, it's an easy thing to fall into. So I've been trying to talk to my friends who do have kids or my, further employees or people that I know that have kids of like, how have you been able to transition to being a mom, but don't let it kind of encompass your entire life? And I don't mean that in I'm going to love my children and they are going to be my life, but they are still going to be a portion of that life.
Yeah. No, I think that's and I'll share a perspective. And I think it's really important that you do just ask different women in different places and kind of what they've chosen. And my whole thing about life is just have peace with what you've chosen. I think too often we live in this place where I wish I would have, or maybe I should have, or I could have, or when people ask me are you busy? I'm like, it's my choice to be. I have such exceptional opportunities in both being a mom and being a wife and all, it's my choice to be. I'm not going to talk about it like it's some cross to bear, I've put myself in that situation. And I think that we need to be comfortable with what we're choosing. I want to respond first. You talked about just your body, and I joke, and it's easy to joke about it that I'm too vain for pregnancy. But some of it is I lose a sense of myself, and it's not just because with every single one I've gained 50 pounds, and it's not that I let myself go crazy. It's just what my body does, and you do feel a sense of lost control in a way that you do have to find yourself in a different way. And every single time I have a baby, it's I feel like it's God's way of reminding me, it's a selflessness that it takes in particular to be the mom of an infant, because their needs are not on a timetable that sort of are, is relevant to the rest of society. And it's, to me, that's the thing to pay attention to. And when I start to realize, the more I fight it, and that doesn't mean at some day, there's going to be a day where you do get to sort of reclaim your body and put it back together. But when there's that tension all the way down the hill, and I'm going to say to me, it's from week 1 to week 40 of sort of gestation, that to me, down the hill. And then climbing the hill back up of okay, how long is it going to take me to get back to where I started? And giving yourself this is a process of becoming selfless, of understanding that for a period of time, my own physical needs are not the most primary one that I have to meet for a period of time. I think, again, my story, I think it gets out of hand when women don't reclaim their space and their bodies and the things that they need to sort of put together whole days. But the reality is, with a 3-week-old baby, you are going to feel like a dirty dish rag that hasn't been washed in 140 years and that somebody just decided to like put underneath the dryer, because you're just going to feel like crap and you're going to think life's never going to be the same, but it is. It will. You will, I believe, recognize yourself again. But the other piece that you talked about, which is how much space you let your kids take up in your own life, to me was also a very conscious decision. And you said the words like, my kids are part of my world, but they aren't my world. And I say that I love my kids so much, but I could make it such that only their needs were met every single day that I wake up in a year. And I have to fight them to say, like, you guys can't come downstairs because I need 40 minutes to work out. Like, nobody can come downstairs. I don't want to see anybody's face. And that is claiming space for myself because it's what I need. But as a mom, your kids will take every resource, every hour, every dollar. They just will. And it does feel mean or like you love them a little less, but you kind of have to get clear about what you need from your day. And the same thing as I think about working, and there is an opportunity cost to our time, and you have to figure out what works inside your house and your household and the vision you and your husband have for what it's going to look like for your kids. But I also know that there's totally different opportunities I can give them in choosing a 2-career household and choosing the things that I'm growing and learning as a leader and the way that I can parent them. That creates a different household for them too. I think in a weighted positive way versus negative. Does that make sense? It's not like one is net terrible and one is net positive. It's about finding the right balance. So I don't know, any reactions or things that brings up for you?
No, I think you're right. I think one of my favorite books I've read so far, because I'm trying to prepare myself, and sometimes my husband sits me down and is like, are you getting too prepared? Like, I think you're psyching yourself out a bit. But, I want to go into it knowing as much as I can to be mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually prepared, because it's a lot to take on. But my favorite book is Crib Sheet. I don't know if you've read it. Expecting Better is another one. It's the pregnancy version of it. But I think the best thing she does is she says point blank, and she says it in the beginning, she says it throughout, she says at the end, I'm going to tell you what the data says, and that is meant to help you make the decision that's right for your family, because no one parents the same. Even if you follow the same kind of parenting style or parenting themes, like, you are not going to be the same as anyone else. And the important thing to keep in your mind is to do what is right for your family. So I think I've been trying to keep that in my head of like, I can talk to people and I can figure out what their advice is, but no, like, it's never going to translate 1,000,000% for me. And being okay that you create your own story in this realm, and like, people are going to judge you. I mean, like, you go out on social media and it is horrific. Like, there's some times where I'm just like, oh man, why are you guys so uptight about like this rattle? It's crazy. But I think just having the confidence to know that you are doing the right thing for your family, and as long as you are keeping the health of your family and the happiness of your family in mind, and you're doing what works for you, like, that's the right answer. And it can be hard because like, you have to create that right answer. No one's going to tell you, and you can read 1,000,000 books and they're all going to say different things. Like, that's the hardest part, And so trying to take in all this information, figure out what the facts and the data are, because there are still facts. Like, we live in a really weird world where people don't think there are facts anymore, but there are actual facts that you can develop off of and build off of. But it's taking that data, processing it, and figuring out how does it fit into your capacity, into your lifestyle, and feeling okay with that. And don't let anyone bash you for it. Of course, like, if you're doing something that's endangering your child, that's another story. But I would hope that most parents aren't doing things like that.
Yeah, you mentioned early on that you're really into fitness and this kind of thing. And if you think about charting out your ideal fitness year, you'd have this many calories on the weekdays, you'd have this many on the weekends, you'd have this many workouts per month. And the reality of executing against that is that you win some days and you lose some. And I found parenting to be a very similar exercise of like, the macro is like I feel like my husband and I are a net win. But when you look at the micro, sometimes we lost that day. And sometimes by choice, like sometimes like you are like, I'm going to have 3 donuts today. That's my plan. And you just lose on purpose. And it's kind of the same. It's like sometimes like, no, we're both going to be gone traveling. We try really to minimize that. But sometimes we choose that we're both going to be gone. That means some not totally random. It's like going to stay with them, and they're probably going to have kind of some rough starts to the day. And that might happen a couple times a year. And it's not going to be their favorite, but they're not going to die. And so sometimes you pick that, and that's fine. But I think knowing that it's going to be imperfect. And I think too often when we talk about work-life balance and we talk about parents and the environment we need to create for our kids, it's okay for them also to feel a sense of sacrifice and like needing to contribute to what we're doing as a family. And especially as our kids have gotten older, I mean, you're going to have a baby, giving them context for what the bigger picture looks like helps them to understand, why are we doing this? And they feel like they can participate in it.
And I think you said something that kind of leads into a question that we've been considering. I don't know if you and your husband have family in town or close by, but we're in a situation where my parents are 500 miles away. His family's almost 1,000 miles away. We don't have anyone here that is that family. Of course, we have close friends and we have, our coworkers and things like that, but we don't have that built-in family. I don't have that built-in grandma or grandpa around. And so we've been trying to figure out, they talk about it takes a village to raise a child, but I don't have that built-in village. So what do I do? And of course, there are nannies and there are ways that you can hire people to help in those situations. But I mean, just thinking outside that scope is just so overwhelming at times, I think, because I've been desperately trying to get my parents to move here, but I just don't think it's feasible or possible for them. And so coming to terms with okay, mom's not going to be here. What do I do?
Yeah. Yeah, I that's exactly right. It does take a village. I'll answer that in 2 ways. I have the advantage of family close, and so I can't give firsthand examples. But here's what I can tell you on the giving side, because you're talking about the receiving side. I would say pay close attention to the people around you that you want to have influence over your kids and in your life. We have friends who live close to us that don't have family near, or they're only children and they don't have siblings. And I have stepped into that space and said, hey, I want to be an aunt-like figure to your kids. I want to go to their games. I want my front doorstep to be a place that you feel like you can drop them anytime. I can run them to a doctor's appointment. Now, I have older kids, so I recognize that. But I think the thing that happens is when you're an adult, self-sufficiency is part of the thing that we get a lot of, we get very prideful of that. Like, look, I'm doing all the things. Look at me. I don't need a bunch of people around me. I've got some friends that I hang with, but it's a sort of balanced relationship. We give a little, take a little, and that's no problem. But when you have kids, the truth is you need people. And getting comfortable relying on those people who want to be there for you, it's their pleasure to get to know your baby. It's their pleasure to be able to help you. And some of those people might not have kids yet. It might be a neighbor who's a little bit older. But look for those people who want to come alongside that journey. And it can be weird because you're like, well, I've never watched their kid before, or I never helped them in this way. And it might start imbalanced, but you'll find people when you get to a place where you're more experienced with your kids, where you see, your version of you 10 years from now move into the street and you recognize what it was like to live in a city where you didn't have community, and that they're going to need somebody to come alongside or to take a meal or to just let the mom sleep in the afternoon for a couple hours. And so I think that's where our own vulnerability, and I'll say pain, because to some degree it's, you would love to have your family just in the block, I think can really make us just more aware of where we can really serve others. So my encouragement, because I have close friends that live by, and I have to all but rip her kids out of her arms because she's just not because maybe she's afraid to let me watch them, but she just wants to be able to do it herself. And I'm like, you have to let me help you. It's my joy to do so. And so, letting people step into that space and being courageous and asking them to, hey, we really want to form a village. Would you be willing to invest in my kid this way?
Asking for help is hard.
It is. And it comes from a place of pride. Like we just have to be honest about that with ourselves of like, no, I've always been able to do it and I can pull this off too. And it's just so cool. I had a straggler baby and so it's hilarious, like we go to things and my friends are like dusting off their pack and plays. Like, like little crusty from 7 years ago when we last had it out. But to see my friends invest in my baby, it's the coolest thing because they're so glad to have a baby around again, and I'm super happy to share her. But for a while, I was like, oh, I kind of feel bad. Your kids are older. It's inconvenient. And they just love it. And so I think letting people step into that space is really hard. And I think especially coming out of COVID, we're so used to locked doors and, like literally not touching each other. I think society only gets better when we sort of act as community in that way.
And I guess another question, and this is a very generic question that every person who has their first baby probably asks people who have babies, but what do you wish you had known?
I think I wish I had known, I don't know if you plan to breastfeed, but that was like a part of the process that I just like, I felt like, oh, great, I delivered the kid, you handed it to me, we have the great picture. Like, woo, like we're back. Done. And I think I just underestimated that. That part was really hard for me. I have never enjoyed it. And just the like, I don't know, just the emotional stamina of like, okay, every 3 hours you also need me. Like you just fed off of me literally for 40 weeks. It was just kind of a lot. And I think the first one I was really thrown off. I'm naturally just wildly independent. And so I think also it was just like really hard on some of my self-identity. The fact that this baby was really dependent on me. It was just hard. And my dad says something that hard is not the end. It's just hard. And I now know to just be like, it's just going to be hard. I only breastfeed 3 to 4 months. For me, it's just all I can do. And I'm okay with that. Other women have just much more success with it. And I just know now I've got 12 to 16 weeks. I just kind of put my head down and get through each week, and that's just fine. The other advice that I give women is remember that doctors and nurses are there to help you get this baby out safely. This whole like birthing plan madness to me is just a little bit like we're somehow trying to be bougie with this. I mean, I think you just want it out.
Just birth my baby safely, please.
Yeah. So I like my tendency is like, you're the boss here. That's what I tell the doctor. You're the boss here. You do this like all day on the reg. I'm going to do this a couple times in my life, and they all come out a little different. So what are we going to do here? And I literally tell them. So that would be the other thing. I personally don't connect to that. Another part of the process that you really don't have control over. I think it's sort of an illusion, and it creates a lot of disappointment for women. And so I literally tell the doctor, you're in charge here. The goal is to get this out as quickly and safely as possible, and let's do that. So those would be the two things that I think can be hard.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up breastfeeding because I can't tell you what I'm more terrified of, birth or breastfeeding. And that like seems really wild to say. And I would never have expected that until I got to this point of like actually like flipping the pages and like looking underneath the covers, because you just think automatically like this is a natural thing you do and it should be easy and simple and there's not going to be any challenges and the baby's just going to be there and suck on you and that's just what it is. And then you're just like, oh no, like that's not at all what it's like.
I'm always like, I kind of just want a sandwich. I don't want to nurse this baby right now. I'm kind of hungry and it's been a minute.
And you just don't expect it to be challenging. You just expect it to be easy and simple. And yeah, it's going to be a pain in the butt because you have to wake up every 3 hours in the beginning. But that there's a time where that will end and it'll be all right. And you'll get back to kind of more of a cycle to some extent. But I mean, oh my God, like it has been horrifying to just dig into it and realize that it is probably not going to be easy. And I think that's why I have gone into it with a mindset of I'm going to try because I know that is from the data, again, that is what's best. Of course, there's not a huge gap between formula and breastfeeding and breast milk, but there is some places where it just outweigh in the benefits. But, you just have to be open that, like you said, like things just don't work out how you think they will, and you have to be open to it. And there's also just so much mom shaming out there. It's like, I think we're finally seeing the pendulum swing of people understanding like it's not a cut and dry black and white issue, but it's still out there. And yeah, I think that has been the most surprising thing of just like, oh, this isn't going to be easy. I don't just put the baby there and he just knows what to do. And you're like, okay, cool.
Or it can be easy. I think that the biggest thing is just knowing it's another part of the process you don't have control over. And as it relates to like going back to work and that piece of it all, my advice to young moms is to say like, just don't make any major decisions in the first 6 to 12 months, because that existence does not perpetuate for the next 18 years. Like it is a very unique point in time. And I think in particular, your first one, it's very overwhelming. My youngest is, I think, 7 or 8 months now. And I just told my husband, I feel like I'm re-experiencing my mind for the first time. And after every kid, it takes a while. I don't know, people would probably study it and it's hormones or whatever the thing is, but it takes a minute where I'm like, oh my word, I'm just totally back. I have my energy, my brain works, I can remember people's names. Like, we are really gonna do some things with our lives. Can't wait for it. But it takes a minute. And I think, and again, this is not a like cry for people to stay in their careers if they don't feel called to that. But I do really encourage young women to say like, just give yourself a little time. It's a really big decision, and those first 6 to 12 months are just kind of a free-for-all. It's very hard.
And all your 4 children are girls, is that correct?
Yeah, I have all girls, yeah.
So one thing I've been thinking about is because I know the perspective of a woman, and I know the things that I would want to teach my daughter and things that I know my daughter would go through, but we're having a boy. So that's a whole new realm because, I have close guy friends, but that only gets you so far in understanding. And I don't have any brothers. I'm not even close to any like boy cousins or things like that. And so one thing I've been thinking about is, all these girl moms, especially you as a mother of 4 girls, like what do you wish boy moms would teach their sons? There's just so many things out there that I think that we gloss over with boys and that we put the responsibility on the girls. And I hope that would change. And I'm just interested, like when you're seeing your kids grow up and you have a wide range now, what are the things you're thinking in your head that like, why didn't your mom teach you this, little boy?
This is what I found. Parenting is about instilling values. And I don't teach them how to be a girl. You don't teach them how to be a boy. That's what they are, But it is about just teaching values. And so my suspicion is that whether you had a girl or a boy or lots of girls or lots of boys, your intentionality about even asking that question of like, what do I want to teach them? I think too often as parents, the shortcut can be to play and to entertain our kids. And while there is a place for that, my kids are wonderfully fun. Our job is at the end of the day to make sure that they have a clear set of understanding about how decisions impact outcomes and decisions represent the values of what you are practicing. And I tell my kids all the time, you are practicing what you are becoming. And if you are going to, fib to me or you're going to tell me, like, then that's what you're practicing. And I'm mad at you, and yes, there's going to be consequences, but the bigger picture is that's not what you don't want to grow up and be a liar. You don't want to grow up and, be a bully. You don't want to grow. And so we're not going to practice those things. And so I think as you think about your son and the young man that you want him to be, you'll see those things, those tendencies that are in his heart. And, I have kids who are natural. I have one that is naturally compliant, and I have to teach her to stand up for herself. And I have one that is, right at the jump on all the things, and I have to teach her to sort of let other people go first. And so you don't know what their individual spirits are going to need, but as you think about what you want your son to be and what you want him to be as a man, I just think parents have to understand even what we're teaching them at 3, 4, 5, 8, 12, that is building the layers, the tissue paper layers of who they're going to become as adults. And I think we don't always get clear on that as fast as we should, because you can't teach them at 16 to be something that they're not already becoming,
Yeah. I mean, my tip is boy moms, teach your boys how to cook. Oh my gosh, please, please, please. Like, Vicki, I love you, but why did you not teach your son that a whole jar of salt doesn't go into the salted pasta water?
Is this your mother-in-law?
Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
I joke with him all the time about that. So, because they're just, you just see simple things that, and of course it goes both ways with girls and boys, but just these things that you're like, why aren't you taught this?
Yeah, so that's another interesting way to ask the question, because the things I've had to teach my husband to be to my daughters is verbal. And so maybe that is like, I'm like, if you can verbalize how you see them or how you think of them, that means a lot to them. And that would be something that if my sister-in-laws or anybody listens to this, they will laugh. They are not verbal in that. And so it's something he's had to learn as an adult as a dad of girls, that maybe your son can practice giving you verbal compliments, telling you how much he loves you as a mom.
Yeah, I joke with my husband all the time, like, you better start cooking now because our son is going to know how to wine and dine his partner, and it's going to be fantastic.
You're going to teach him lamb chops and whatever. Yeah.
And I guess more of a fun question, because we've asked a lot of serious things, but what is one or two must-haves for a diaper bag? And what are things that you're like, you don't ever need to invest in this. You don't need to buy this.
Yeah, for the diaper bag in particular?
Anything really, I guess.
Well, I can tell you like my top 3 things that I love to gift moms. Boudreaux's butt cream, so funny, but they get rashy at some point, and it's amazing. Boudreaux's butt cream.
And a spatula, right? I've heard the butt spatulas to put it on.
Butt spatula.
Yeah.
I don't know. We old-fashioned moms use our fingers. And some real good soap afterwards. Or not if you're in a hurry. No, I'm teasing. The second one is the Bumbo with the tray. Those things are amazing. She spends her whole life in that thing. Quincy does. And then for my diaper bag, I would put like mints and chapstick for myself. Those would be my 3 things. I also really like diaper trash bags. Those would be another like kind of luxury item that my very efficient self, I'm surprised I buy them, but they're very helpful.
We have 2 very big dogs, so we already have the poop
Oh,
bags
that's
all
the
over,
thing, yes.
so we're prepared
Yeah,
there.
poop bags. Yes, you are all set. That's right.
And I think probably one other thing that I've been thinking about, and I kind of mentioned this with my husband, and like I said, my husband's a doctor, so he knows all the things, and I think that's been a blessing for me because he knows how much to tell me and how much not to tell me, which is helpful. Like for our first ultrasound, he didn't tell me what to expect, which was very smart because I would have freaked out about every little aspect of it. I would have worked myself up. Instead, I got there and I was like, oh, that's what you're doing? Like, okay. But I think one thing I've struggled with, and I think I've talked about a little bit, is being prepared, but not too prepared. And so how do you draw the line between knowing what to expect and knowing kind of somewhat in the realm of what's going to happen, but without just like absolutely overwhelming yourself? And a lot of women are overthinkers, and we all get in those zones of just like spiraling out of control. You know, how do you limit yourself on that data intake and being okay, I guess, like I said in the beginning, okay with the unknown, and when to know when it's okay to leave it the unknown?
Mm-hmm. The way I think about this is like, this is the most natural thing that our body will ever do. And so we have to not, I think, override the instinct in us. We were made from our creation to be moms. Our bodies were made for this baby to come out. Our breasts were made to feed a baby. Like all of these things we were made to. That doesn't mean it's not going to be hard, but we were made for this. And so whenever I start to get kind of confused, I'm like, I just kind of go back to my instincts, because the rest of it is sort of a rationalization of our, and when what people study many times is our instincts, right? And they turn it into, so I think just trust that you were made for this. And this baby who is in you was specifically made for you as their mom. And I think you just have to trust that. So, I think it is instinctual. You will love this little baby in a way that you never even imagined. And if there's some days that you don't love the baby as much as you imagined, that's totally normal too, you know? And so I just think resting in the fact that you have anything else that you've wanted to do in your life, you've accomplished. You want to be good at this. And so guess what? you'll figure out a way to be great at it and just rest in that. So what else is on your mind? Text me, 317-350-8921, 317-350-8921. And be sure to follow along on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening today.